And let me just check if we are live now. Just give me a moment, you guys. Right. I think we are live. Yes. I think we are live. Yes. Okay. Very good evening, everybody. Very good evening. I'm sorry, this was a very last minute arrangement going live today at 5 p.m. Uh, so I've curated a mixed bag of questions for our weekend verbal practice today, right? And before we delve into that, allow me to give you a quick introduction of the Unacademy portal, the Unacademy platform. And even before we begin with that, allow me to tell you about the National Scholarship Test that is being launched by Unacademy tomorrow. The first part of the test is from I think 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the portal. Just look it up. There are a lot of cash prizes and Amazon vouchers that will be top 50 winners. So be sure that you partake in that. That will give you a good practice for your any and every management exam, right? Okay, so we all know that Unacademy is perhaps India's largest learning platform today for any competitive exam. This YouTube channel is particularly for management exams like your such as your CAT, GMAT, NMAT, ZAT, and the likes. I am Prankur Arora. I am a trainer and a coach by profession. I've been in the learning industry for the past 2 years, a better part of the past 2 years. I've even had the opportunity to consult for various organizations pertaining to learning and development. These organizations such as Marico, ITC, Becton Dickinson, FMC Corp, PGCIL, right? And I'm also a published author. Wrote this book called "It's Not Funny." Got published a couple of years back. Um, it is a work of satirical fiction, and the book even garnered favorable reviews from comedy legends such as Biswapati Sarkar and Papa CJ. Right. I am. I also hold advanced certifications in facilitation from an American organization called Leadership Management International, and I co-founded this internet company called Thought Sutra. We launched just a week back, right? So you can look it up online. You can visit thoughtsutra.com, or you can check it out on Instagram. So there's quite a lot of features that add to the Unacademy pedagogy, right? Some of those features include giving you access to daily live classes where all kinds of interaction happens in real time between the learners and the educators. Live tests and quizzes where you get to evaluate your preparation with regular mock tests and quizzes, and you get detailed analysis on your performance. uh, all the courses on the platform are also pretty structured, and with one subscription, you get unlimited access to anything and everything on the platform. Uh, Quite a lot of educators, all highly credible people who've mentored aspirants successfully into various top tier business schools, management schools, like such as your IIMs, MDIs, XLRIs, ISBs, you name it, they've cracked it. With you can also experience all classes on the platform or plus classes for free, and start learning from these educators before deciding whether you want to uh, you know avail additional key benefits that come with the subscription or not. New batches, new courses, they keep on going live on the platform. Language is never a barrier either, because we've got educators who teach in vernacular languages as well. So if you're not as comfortable with English, I'm pretty sure you'll find someone on the platform who will teach you in a regional language that you were brought up on, right? And plus, you decide your own schedule, right? You decide who are the kind of educators you want to be learning from, what are the kind of courses you want to enroll into, and all we do is we send you those push notifications and timely reminders so that you don't miss out on anything you set your eyes on, right? And as I said, all interaction happens in real time. So discussions, doubt clearing sessions, everything happens in real time on the platform. And question answers, they occur in a very lively format called the live polls, where we launch polls on any and every question that we want to test participants on, learners on, and you compete for a place on the leaderboard, right? And that leaderboard is made visible to everybody who's a part of that class, which is another adrenaline rush altogether, right? Plus, in all the tests and the quizzes that you appear for, we give you detailed reports and analysis. Stuff like how much time you spent on every question, what are your topic wise scores and section wise scores, all that data that will help you develop perspective about your learning journey. That will tell you what where you're going wrong, where you're going right, what you've got to tweak about your learning journey. So all that perspective comes through the detailed reports and analysis that we give you on your tests and quizzes, right? And you'll see that throughout the lesson I'll be scribbling a lot of things on the class notes. All these class notes, they're made available to you once you subscribe to the platform, right? And talking of subscription, these are the various subscription models that Unacademy has made available for you. You can clearly see that as the time period of subscription goes up, the cost of subscription per month goes down dramatically, right? And if you use my first name Prankur, you get an extra 10% off on any of the subscriptions that you go for. Right. Having said that, let's begin the lesson for the day. We'll start with assumption questions. So this is the first question. Uh, solve me and hit me up on the chat. Solve it and hit me up on the chat with your answer. Right, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, Anushka says it's D. All right. Let's look at it. I think Anushka, you've gotten this right. Give me a moment. Yes. So, when using the process of elimination, get rid of all the answer choices that either don't support the conclusion or don't affect the conclusion's soundness. What do I mean by this? So, the trick to solving assumption questions typically, when it comes to reasoning questions, is that you negate every answer option, and on negating every answer option, you will figure out that there will be one option जिसको negate करने पे your conclusion totally falls apart, right? That is the trick, essentially. That their conclusion will fall apart by negating an answer option, which is basically the assumption on which the argument depends, right? For example, the idea here is that the World Trade Organization has decided that, you know what, we want country, we want this producer of athletic footwear, we want this producer to basically do what, we want this producer to uh, increase the wage of its workers, right? And on increasing the wage, the argument is that the cost of production will rise, right? That is the basically conclusion here. Therefore, the company's cost of production of athletic footwear will rise. Let's look at answer option 1. The company has never been forced to raise the minimum wage of its workers in the past. If we negate a negative statement, it becomes positive. The company has been forced to raise the minimum wage of its workers in the past. All right, but then it is the past, it is not the present. We're talking about the present, right? We're talking about the present, so we're not concerned with anything that happened in the past. Sales of the company's footwear in country P will rise. Sales of the company's footwear in country P will not rise, right? Sales of the company's footwear in country P will not rise is what this begins, is what this becomes. But again, sales is not telling us anything about the cost of production here. We want something to tell us about whether the cost of production increases or not, because the argument hinges upon that. See, footwear that is produced in country P is superior to that produced in any other country. Footwear that is produced in country P is not superior to that produced in any other country. So what? Does not tell us anything about cost of production, negate this. The company will continue to produce its athletic footwear in country P, we negate this. The company will not continue to produce its athletic footwear in country P, and now our conclusion falls apart, because the argument is that, you know what, we're increasing the cost of production, right? If we are increasing the minimum wage, if we are enforcing labor laws, then our cost of production goes up. But what if the company decides that, you know what, we don't want to operate in country P anymore, we'll shift to country Q. If we shift to country Q, what if, the labor laws there are not as stringent and they can continue to work in a similar fashion and the minimum wage does not increase, so their cost of production remains the same? Or what if it goes down in some other country, right? So this is basically what seems like the most viable answer option, right? Last option: the company's public display of compassion for its workers will ultimately translate into a better image among consumers. The company's public display of compassion for its workers will not ultimately translate into a better image among consumers. Again, this is a heartstrings, answer option. Does not tell us anything about the cost of production, though, right? It will probably appeal to your heart, appeal to your emotion, but it will not tell us anything about the cost of production, so we eliminate this option as well. And the only viable answer option is option D, because that tells us that, you know what, cost of production need not necessarily increase, because this company could go to some other country and start operations there, right? Next question: choose the correct sentence. Choose the correct sentence. Each of the students has done well, has done well, have done well, have done well. So whenever we have each in our subject, right? Whenever each is a part of the subject, then your verb takes a singular form, right? So we eliminate options 3 and 4. Each of the students, we are referring to each single student. Each of the students, because we are talking about a group of students. We're talking about many students. So each of the students has done well is the correct answer. Good job, Anushka. Well done. Each of the students has done well. Okay. Next question. Option 4. Option 4 it seems like the most feasible option here. They each have their own story to. So the difference is here each was a part of the subject and here each is coming after the subject, right? And whenever each comes after the subject, it depends on whether the subject is plural or singular for the verb, right? So because here the subject is plural, the verb will have to be plural, right? So therefore we eliminate options 1 and 3. They each have, because this is plural, this will have to be plural. They each have his own story to tell is again incorrect. Why? Because we are referring to, a group of people. We're talking about multiple people. So they each have their own story to tell. His is incorrect yet again, right? So fourth is the correct answer option. Good job, Anushka. Well done. Let's move on to an inference question now. Which of the following statements represents the most reliable conclusion that can be drawn from the information above? This is the information. Right. So let's go through the question. Let's go through the passage. Health professionals have argued that too much butter in a person's diet can cause the dangerous overdevelopment in the bloodstream of high density lipoproteins that can clog arteries and put that person at risk of a heart attack. Um, in South Korea, however, where per capita butter consumption is almost non existent, the incidence of heart attacks is no less than that in countries where butter is commonly served at every meal. So, the idea here is that you have to infer from this passage, and when we talk of inference questions, we have to figure out which of these options has to be true based on what the passage is saying. That is what the passage is implying. That is what the passage is inferring. D. Okay. All right. Let's look at it. Answer option 1 says most people, if told of the potential risk of butter consumption, would willingly switch to. See, this is again a very emotional and a heartstring answer option, but it does not need to be true, right? It does not need to be true. For example, if I think I want to, take up fitness, it's not like I would straight away be like, okay, fine, I'll stop having burgers and pizzas, right? It is a very ideal situation, right? It is a very, very ideal situation that most people, if told of the potential risk of butter consumption, would willingly switch to margarine or some other butter substitute. Plus, the passage is not really giving us any hints of that happening. So, we eliminate option A. Option B. Despite arguments to the contrary, butter does not have a deleterious effect on the human heart. Now, uh, again, the passage says health professionals have argued that too much butter can cause dangerous overdevelopment, right? So this is contradicting what the passage is already telling us, so we eliminate B. C. Koreans avoid butter because they dislike the taste, not because of health risk. Again, nothing in the passage seems to suggest that, so we eliminate C as well. See, these are irrelevant answer options where the passage is not giving us any information pertaining to that. D. Butter consumption is probably not the only factor that can be linked to the increase of heart attacks, is a very logical conclusion based on what the passage is telling us, because the passage is saying people in Korea do not have butter, their butter consumption is non existent, but the heart attacks seem to be at a stable number as compared to other countries where butter consumption is a lot, right? So that means something else possibly in their diet is causing the heart attacks and it's not butter, right? So this can be inferred on the basis of what the passage is telling us. So D is the correct answer. E. Other dairy products such as cheese and yogurt pose an equal threat to cardio works. Again, nothing in the passage is suggesting this, so we'll eliminate this answer option as well. All right. Good job, Anushka. Next question. Here again, you have to choose the correct sentence. So whenever we have such sentences, her elder brother along with her grandparents. Here, whenever we have, phrases like along with, additive phrases like along with, in addition to, with, right? Whenever we have such additive phrases, the verb takes the form of the first subject, right? When we have x along with additive phrase, or in addition to x, in addition to y, x along with y, x with y, the verb will take the form of x. If x is singular, the verb will be singular. If x is plural, the verb will be plural. Her elder brother is singular, right? Her elder brother is singular. So her elder brother along with her grandparents insists. This is the verb, it should be singular. This is plural, so we eliminate one. Her elder brother, along with her grandparents, insists that she remain in the same college. This seems to be the correct answer. Good job, Anushka. Her elder brother, along with her grandparents, are insisting is again plural. Her elder brother, along with her grandparents, have is again plural, so we eliminate option 4 as well. This is the correct answer. Yes. Good job. Good job. Now we come to a flaw question. What is the flaw here? Which of the following, if true, most strongly indicates that the logic of the prediction above is flawed? So, whenever it comes to flaw questions, the idea is that the flaw is basically based on the information in the passage. When it comes to strengthening or weakening questions, we look for external information in the options and see whether it is in tandem with the assumption in the passage or not. But when it comes to the flaw questions, the mistake, the logical misstep is right there in the passage, you know. So let's look at it. What is the situation? What is the premise here? According to a prediction of the not so distant future published in 1940, electricity would revolutionize agriculture. ठीक है. Electrodes would be inserted into the soil. Now they're talking about the process. How will it revolutionize agriculture? Electrodes would be inserted into the soil, and the current between them would kill bugs and weeds and make crop plants stronger. Now, if this is the process they are submitting, right? The reasoning is that, see, one is they would kill bugs. Okay, fine, that is understandable, that if bugs get an electric shock, they would get killed. And they would kill weeds. Weeds are plants, right? And they would kill, and they would make crop plants stronger. So how does electricity kill weeds and make crop plants stronger at the same time when both of them are plants, right? How can electricity be like, okay, fine, you know what, this plant I will kill and this plant I will make stronger? This is probably the logical flaw here, and let's look at all the answer options. A. In order for farmers to avoid electric shock while working in the fields, the current would be turned off at such times without diminishing the intended effects. See, we're not. Are we concerned about this? Is this what we're talking about? No, we're not concerned about this. What we are concerned about is how will electricity kill weeds and make crop plants stronger at the same time, and whether that makes sense at all. This is not the bone of contention, so we eliminate answer option A. B. If the proposed plan for using electricity were put into practice, farmers would save on chemicals now being added to the soil. Instead of coming across as a flaw, this is rather strengthening the passage, right? This is telling us that, you know what, farmers would be saving money, right? So this is not a flaw, this is rather strengthening the answer option, the passage, and we eliminate B. Therefore it cannot be taken for granted that the use of electricity is always beneficial. Again, this is a very generic statement, not telling us anything about the bone of contention in the passage, right? Not telling us anything about the argument, so we eliminate C as well. D. Since weeds are plants, electricity would affect weeds in the same way as it would affect crop plants. Now, this kind of makes sense, right? Because if it would affect weeds, then it would affect crop plants also. And if it is killing weeds, then instead of making crop plants stronger, it will kill crop plants as well. So therefore, this is the biggest logical misstep the argument is making. E. Because a planting machine would need to avoid coming into contact with the electrodes, new parts for planting machines would need to be designed. Again, see, instead of coming across as flaw, this is coming across as another uh, plus point. It is strengthening the argument instead of coming across as flaw, so we eliminate answer option E as well. And the only viable option, why did I cross out D? Sorry, the only viable option is option D, because we are claiming that, you know what, weeds are also plants. Crop plants are already plants. If weeds are getting killed by electricity, then crop plants ideally will also get killed by electricity, right? So D is the correct answer. Hope all of you have understood this one. Let's move on to a comprehension now. Read this out. I'll give you 90 seconds, and then we'll discuss the summary of these paragraphs. Right. So I hope you've read this by now. Let's discuss both these paragraphs. What, what are they telling us, right? It comes as no surprise that there is little consensus among economists who study the prospects for the new ECB. Some are overwhelmingly enthusiastic about ECB's potential to eliminate exchange rate currency fluctuations among its 11 member economies, while others are convinced that cultural differences and inevitable squabbles over monetary policy doom the central bank to failure, right? So the basic gist of this first paragraph is that, or rather, I'll put the arrow here because I realized right now that if I write there, it won't be visible to you. It will get my thumbnail will basically cover that up, right? So I'll write here. So the first paragraph is telling us that there is this ECB, and either it could be a success or it could be a failure, right? This is what the first paragraph is telling us, that some are overwhelmingly enthusiastic about ECB's potential to eliminate this, while others are convinced that cultural differences and inevitable squabbles over monetary policy doom the central bank to failure. So either success or failure, right? This is the gist of the first paragraph. Second paragraph: the pessimists have a valid point. Okay. What is the valid point? The ECB's primary goal, as specified by the Maastricht Treaty, is to bring about price stability within its area of sovereignty. This stability, however, is predicated on reducing the current incongruity of prices throughout the region. Currently, though, there are too many cultural and financial variables that prevent prices from coming into alignment anytime soon. So, if you pay attention, right, you can see from the very first line, the pessimists have a valid point. Now, this is who is saying this? The pessimists have a valid point. Who is saying this? The author is telling us that, the pessimists, people who think that ECB will be failure, they kind of have a valid point, and then the author goes on to give us reasons for failure. Reasons for what? Reasons for failure. This is what the author is telling us here, right? Let's move on to the third paragraph. Again, I'll give you 60 to 90 seconds to read this and then we'll discuss it. Right. So let's discuss this paragraph now. For a start, the prices of many products sold in Europe already vary from country to country by large margins. The average cost of a pair of blue jeans is 34% uh, higher in Germany than it is in Italy. Some reasons for this can be remedied through legislation. If Germany were to repeal its law prohibiting supermarkets from stocking aspirin on their shelves, for example, aspirin prices might come in line with the rest of the European Union, but most price differentials derive from seemingly immutable standards of living. Personal incomes in Spain and Portugal are well below the European average, as they've been for decades. Thus, prices stay lower to accommodate weaker buying power, and since Scandinavian countries show no sign of adopting the high demand for coffee products that exists in France and Italy, coffee prices will remain much higher in southern Europe than in the north. Right. So, what paragraph 2 was telling us, which is there are so many reasons for failure, paragraph 3 is giving us examples of those cultural differences and financial differences, right? Example of Germany, example of Spain and Portugal, example of Scandinavian region and coffee, right? So there are so many examples that this paragraph has given us now, right? Let's look at paragraphs 4 and 5 now. These are the final two paragraphs, and then we'll move on to the questions. Right. So let's discuss these now. Until now, Europe's different currencies have done well to divert consumers' attention from these price differentials. But now that Europe has adopted its one currency, the euro, Europeans are more likely to seek out the best price regardless of geography. This could mean depressed localized economies of scale. Many countries will not recover from the situation in the short term. So, what is paragraph 4 telling us? Paragraph 4 is giving us a different reason, which is the reason of a common currency, which is again problem of currency, right? If euro happened, what problems are happening or what problems will tend to happen? Problem of currency, right? Different. This is now different from the previous problems, right? And what you'd have noticed is that paragraph 5 is changing the tone altogether, right? Thus far, from paragraph 2 onwards, the author was very pessimistic, right? The pessimists have a valid point. The author was giving us problems, the examples of problems, again the problem of currency, and now all of a sudden the problem, the author has shifted his tone, and the author is saying, you know what, fortunately there are extraordinary financial models to study and replicate. The first is that, you know what, the German Bundesbank and America's Fed, each country within the European Union, regardless of its population or the size of GDP, will be represented equally in the governing council, will dictate policies. Now, here, as long as the lines of communication remain open and country representatives keep an open mind toward what may become a radical overhaul within the European commerce, the euro and the ECB have a fighting chance to survive. So we know here for a fact that, you know what, The author is telling us, what? The author is telling us that thus far I've given you all the problems, right? And I am pessimistic, but you know what? Here I can tell you for a fact that there are still chances of survival, there are still chances of success if you emulate the German bank or the American bank, or if you form a governing council where everybody is equally represented. As long as you keep channels of communication open, as long as you keep an open mind, all these things. What are all these things? All these things are the author telling us that there's still a chance for success, right? So this basically has been the comprehension. Now let's go and solve the questions. Question number 1: the primary purpose of the passage is to do what? What is the primary purpose of the passage? Why did the author write this? Primary purpose basically means why did the author write this? Okay, Anushka says it's C. Alright, let's look at it. Compare the ECB to other financial governing body. This is something the author did, but it is not like the reason for the comprehension, right? This was a part of the last paragraph, but this is not the primary purpose of the passage. Assert that European countries have not embraced the euro are destined to do so. Again, this is not what the author was trying to tell us at all. Provide support for the theory that Europe's transition to a central bank will have many obstacles. This is basically something that kind of makes sense. Anushka, I think you've gotten the right answer. D. Enumerate several examples of the constantly changing. Why we are talking about Europe, we are not considered concerned about the global financial climate. Prove that the ECB will never bring about the price stability on which its survival so dearly depends. See, if we go ahead with option E, we are negating the optimism that the author expressed in the last paragraph. Right? The author in the last paragraph was highly optimistic, right? So let's not go with this because never is an extreme term and it kind of negates the optimism of the author. So we eliminate this and C looks like the most viable answer option, that there are so many obstacles that ECB will have. That is what the passage was talking about. Question 2. In the passage, the author is primarily concerned with which of the following? Again, this is a general question in tandem with what the primary purpose of the passage is. Yanushka says it's D. That was quick. In the passage, the author is primarily concerned with which of the following, comparing two different approaches. No two different. See, no conflict was being discussed in the passage, so we can easily eliminate A. Be expressing dismay over a poorly reasoned conclusion. Not really. Uh, Presenting information and offering different ways. There was only one way to interpret the information, which was the author's way. So we eliminate C. Defending an established policy, no policy discussion was happening. Describing a problem that will not be solved easily seems like the most viable option. Good job, Anushka. That what is the problem? The problem is that maybe ECB will fail because of so many cultural and financial differences between the countries in Europe. Right? This was a problem that was the being discussed in the passage. Which of the following best describes the organization of the passage? Now we are talking about structure. We're talking about what? We're talking about structure here. Which of the following best describes the organization of the passage? Right. D. I don't think the answer will be D, because no paradox is essentially described here, right? Two historical backgrounds, no historical backgrounds are not compared. A problem is identified, discussed, problem was identified, problem was discussed, but the problem was not resolved, right? Because the author said that these are the things you'll have to do to be successful, but there was no resolution there, right? So we eliminate option B. C. A theory is discussed, yes. Evidence is introduced to condemn it. Again, a very strong term. Evidence was introduced as, the examples were problems, but in the end, the author was optimistic also. So C is basically again in conflict with the optimism that the author expressed in the end. There was no paradox as such in the comprehension, so we'll eliminate D. A debate is introduced, yes. Supporting evidence for both sides is presented, yes. Clear cut structure that, this is why it could fail, example, example, example. This is how it could be successful, two, three examples, or two, three ways by which it could be successful. So, evidence was presented for both sides and the debate was introduced there, right? So, that is why E is like the most viable answer option here. Which of the following best describes the relation of the last paragraph to the passage as a whole? This is probably the most, clear cut question, very easy question. C. C looks to be the correct answer, that it adds